Alright guys, very exciting news. As I said in my most recent short video on this channel, I don't think many of us were very surprised that a Batman sequel was going to get announced, but nonetheless, a Batman sequel was indeed announced. It is very exciting news because a lot of us just fell in love with this Batman movie. There are so many things or possibilities that could happen in this movie, and the point of this video is I want to give some of my ideas on what I think we could be getting or what could possibly happen. Now, the first thing I think all of us need to recognize moving forward into the future of this franchise is the two upcoming shows that are planned, and that would be the Penguin show and the Arkham Asylum show. Now, the details of the Penguin show I can only assume is going to be about how he regains control after Carmine Falcone is now killed, and what he does inside the city of Gotham now that it's somewhat flooded over. And now that there is a power grab, he's obviously going to take advantage of that and start ruling the underbelly of Gotham as he sees fit. The Arkham Asylum show, don't really know what this could be about. I can only assume we will get Paul Dano's Riddler back. We might get Barry Keoghan's Joker into the mix of this show. I've heard very loose rumors that Victoria Pedretti, who played Love in the You TV series, which, by the way, if you have not watched that show, I highly suggest it, but there are very loose rumors that she could possibly be playing Dr. Harleen Quinzel. I would love it. I think the casting choice is damn near perfect. In my honest opinion, I think it is as good as Margot Robbie, but don't put too much stock into it. It's all word of mouth. It could have simply been created by someone who thinks the casting choice is just good and hey, let's make a rumor. But overall, what could the Arkham Asylum show be about? Maybe we get to discover the fact that Batman actually has more villains in Arkham, more than we would have thought in his recent 2 years as Batman. Maybe this is a perfect time to develop the Joker character and a Harley Quinn character. That would possibly be smart. Maybe this is also an opportunity to show how the Riddler and the Joker start to get along and create a friendship, where at the end of this entire series, at the end of this franchise, when Batman needs to go up against his whole rogues gallery, it's going to be difficult when there is a specific level of trust between his rogues gallery. Now that that has been taken into consideration, the first thing I want to talk about moving forward into the Batman sequel is simply the flooding of Gotham. I know that Matt Reeves has made some suggestions of the idea of Mr. Freeze. I know that recently on social media, a lot of people have talked about the introduction of Mr. Freeze and possibly how the flooding of Gotham could lead into the freezing of Gotham. And I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I think it's actually really smart how this all played out so that if he actually wanted to use Mr. Freeze, he could. But I will say, I don't think Mr. Freeze will be used. I don't think Mr. Freeze is a character that is designed to fit this type of Batman world. Prove me wrong, though. If he can fit into this, I will gladly watch it and love it. I don't care. I'm just saying I can't see it as of right now. Also, to add on with the flooding of Gotham, I do hope that when the sequel comes around, I'm not necessarily saying I'd be pissed if it happened. I do hope there are parts of Gotham that are still flooded and are in need of repair, because I want the city to still feel like it is hurting from the effects of the Riddler. Batman defeating the Riddler, at least his master plan, narcissistically, the Riddler is going to sit there and think he completely failed and he has to do this again. But if the Riddler just really paid attention to the city as a whole and its people, he would realize that Gotham will probably never be the same after everything he revealed on live television and social media. So I think keeping pieces of Gotham flooded will be a necessary tool to use for the sequel. Now, this is one I've been thinking a lot of lately, and I would love it if they went down this route. making No Man's Land, and that kind of feels like what they were going for at the end of the movie. But also, for more clarification, that's actually what Christopher Nolan did in The Dark Knight Rises when Bane destroyed all of the bridges surrounding Gotham City. Although No Man's Land is also a story that involves Lex Luthor, and he actually tries to take over Gotham and rebuild the city, and Batman needs to stop him from doing that, which is always really interesting to me. I like when superheroes take on other villains who aren't technically categorized as their own. I've always loved the idea of Superman having to deal with the Joker, or the Flash having to deal with Metallo, or Batman needing to deal with Cheetah. Like, just really interesting stuff like that. I like when superheroes have to dabble in the worlds of other supervillains, and I think it would actually be really neat involving Lex Luthor in a Batman film. I'm not sure how well that would translate to the wider audience. People might get confused, like, isn't Lex Luthor a Superman villain? Why are they doing that for a Batman movie? I think there is a very clever way around it, and technically Metropolis and Lex Luthor does exist in this Batman world as it was described in the Batman prequel novel. Not saying they would ever go down this route. They would probably use a different character within the Batman world who would suit a Lex Luthor figure. Maybe someone like a Daggett or a Stag or a Hush. Now, if they were to go down that area of rebuilding Gotham City in a new image, more in a villainous way, but to the people of Gotham, it's shadowed in positivity, they could use Hush for that idea. And what they could do is they could simply use this idea where Hush has been taking pieces of faces from other people and molding his own Bruce Wayne look, where he goes out to the public and acts as Bruce Wayne in every single way. Hush is a smart enough character to be able to get the resources to do exactly that and essentially steal Bruce Wayne's life. I know there's even a Hush Easter egg in this Batman movie, so why not dabble with his character in the future? I actually don't know if Hush would be used as a sequel villain. I almost feel like Hush would be used as a third or a fourth movie. Now, once again, how many movies will this last? I mean, as of right now, I think it's just going to be 3, but you never know with Warner Brothers and DC right now. Robert Pattinson at the end of the day could end up being the new DCEU Batman. Who knows? I personally feel like maybe you could use the sequel as another villain, but in the background, you could show off certain Easter eggs of the Hush existing. You could even get the actor for Hush already and plant him in certain scenes in the background of the sequel film, so that when you get to the third film, you could look back at number 2 and be like, oh my god, he was there the whole time or something. But overall, if Matt Reeves was to use Hush for the sequel villain, you won't see me complaining. He knows how to craft a well-written story, so I won't doubt him if he were to use Hush for the sequel. I'm just saying, if it were up to me, I would probably wait for a third movie, but hey, Matt Reeves, you do you. Now, another potential for a villain is, of course, the Court of Owls, which is a theory that I had a couple months ago before the movie came out, and it's a popular theory. Of course, the Court of Owls have quickly become one of Batman's most popular villains. I mean, the Court of Owls are going to be the main villain of a new Batman-centric video game in Gotham Knights. The Court of Owls comic book has quickly become one of the most popular, not just Batman comic books, but comic books of all time. So I could obviously see the intrigue in using the Court of Owls, and I certainly think they should. I would even actually switch my answer here after thinking about it and say, maybe you use Hush as the sequel villain, and maybe he could plant specific ideas throughout the movie that, like, hey, Bruce Wayne, you got no idea what's going on in the background of Gotham City. You have no idea what your parents were actually involved in. And then number 3 could deal with the big event, the Court of Owls. One of the super popular scenes in the film when Batman is trying to help the district attorney get the bomb collar off his neck by answering the riddles, it comes down to the final riddle when the Riddler asks who is the rat, who is he being paid to protect, and he won't give up the name, or plural, names. Is there a possibility that that scene was alluding to this idea that there is an Illuminati figure in Gotham, which would be the Court of Owls? I feel like there are a lot of moments in the Batman film where they are trying to allude to this idea that there is the Court of Owls hiding in the underbelly of Gotham, and literally underbelly, like underneath the city. If you were to do a poll, and I will actually do a poll after I release this video, I do have a feeling that the Court of Owls would be one of the more popular villain archetypes that people would want to see in a sequel film. I think the top 2 as of right now would be the Court of Owls and Hush. I know a lot of people want to see the Joker. I'm one of the people who will never get tired of Batman and Joker dueling it out. It's just never gonna happen. But even I will say, maybe for the second movie, sure, have the Joker in it. He's going to be in it no matter what. We all know this. But as a main villain, I don't necessarily think you need to have him as a main villain. You can plant the idea that, okay, the Joker's coming. He's going to be one of the or the main villain in the third one. But I think maybe try a new villain for now. Once again, if you're going to use the Joker for the second one, I'm not going to sit here and complain, baby. Matt Reeves, once again, you do your thing. Matt Reeves is allowed to do his thing because he's gained my trust in making one of the best comic book films of all time. Now, talking about the Batman himself, I want to discuss a couple of things that I think could happen for him in a sequel film. So first of all, actually, because it's directly tied to Batman, we need more Alfred. I would love to see more of this iteration of Alfred. And honestly, guys, you cannot have Andy Serkis as Alfred and not use him. He is such a phenomenal actor, and he needs to be acknowledged as such in this role. I would love to see this Alfred in action as well, because you can tell this guy knows how to fight. You can tell he knows how to handle himself. Even with a cane and half burnt like he was in this film, you could still tell he can handle his shit. Bro, I feel like Deathstroke could walk into the second film and Batman would like square up. And all of a sudden, Alfred would nudge him with his cane and he'd be like, "Don't worry, Master Bruce, I can handle this one." And he just starts, bah, 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 bah. Now, since we just talked about Alfred, I might as well talk about the people who are close to Batman before I start talking about Batman and his aesthetic himself. There's also an introduction of Lucius Fox. I think you could find a way to do that in this second film. I don't think it's necessary, but I'm also not opposed to it. And you also got to be careful because even though I do have a lot of confidence in Matt Reeves, you don't want to suffocate the movie with too many people and too many characters. So if Lucius Fox was introduced in the second film, that's cool, but if he wasn't, he can always be introduced later. Third, you have Commissioner Gordon, and I think their dynamic needs to stay the same in the second film. In this film, it's pretty much shown to us that they really only trust each other, and I think it needs to continue that way in number 2. The cops in the Gotham City Police Department are going to forever be grimy. They're forever going to be dirty, and you can't trust them. And I think Batman and Gordon need to retain this dynamic of only trusting each other. I also think it would be really fun, and you don't need to do anything with it, but the possibility of Gordon mentioning he has a daughter. And we obviously know that would be Barbara Gordon. It's just like a little fun Easter egg. If they do it, they do it. If they don't, they don't. And then, of course, you have Catwoman. And I'm really interested to see what they do here, considering at the end of the film, she goes to Bloodhaven. I find it very hard to imagine this Batman world without Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz together. She needs to be used somehow, even if that means after time she chose to come back to Gotham, or maybe a specific job has led her to Gotham. Batman, Bruce Wayne himself, I think there is many things you could do in this film. I think the Batsuit is going to get an overhaul, and I'm not saying it's going to look 100 times different, but I think there are certain things that will be added. I think his greaves, his leg armor, is going to look more attuned to his chest piece and his arms. I think he will get the gauntlets. I think he's going to get a ton more gadgets. We're going to see more batarangs, smoke bombs, whatever else he needs in his utility belt that best suits this Batman to this world. Even the Batmobile, I think, is going to look different as well. I think it will still have that muscle car aesthetic, but I do think it is going to be upgraded a little bit, where it ain't no ordinary muscle car. This is like an alien muscle car. This thing looks nasty. Like, it should not even be possible that a human made this thing. And I think the Batmobile will transition into being very prestigious. I wouldn't mind if they changed the Batcave up a little bit and actually made it look like he was in an underground cave. Even in the Dark Knight trilogy and Zack Snyder's Batman, they did create a Batcave that looked, or literally was, inside of a cave, and I think they'll be able to get away with doing that in the sequel film. Once again, everything we saw from this Batman in the first film isn't just gonna stay the same. That movie was basically a movie of growth. We all know that this Batman is gonna grow into something legendary as every movie goes on. And then there's the Bruce Wayne conversation. I know a lot of people have talked about his emo representation, which of course fits the vibe of the first one. But moving into the sequel, I think Bruce Wayne is going to start to learn that he needs to be that billionaire playboy, a little more outgoing, cocky, and arrogant. I still think to this day, guys, the best representation of a Bruce Wayne in public crowds surrounded by rich people is Christian Bale's. The way he acted as Bruce Wayne at galas and parties and Batman Begins, The Dark Knight especially, that is exactly how Bruce Wayne would act, so that people would look at him and think, man, he's just a dumb rich kid. He would never have what it takes to be a Batman. And I think that is possibly what Robert Pattinson is going to start to transition to a little bit more in the sequel. Now, as for the vibe of the film, don't change it. Keep it as dark as it was in the first movie. We've already clarified the fact that, at the end of the film, he does not want the people of Gotham to be afraid of him. He does have to realize that he needs to give off at least a little bit of hope to the people, whereas the criminals should still be remaining the same in feeling the fear that he delivers. I think that's fine, but I don't think there's any need to change the dark vibe that they already gave us in the first film. Keep that darkness in the second. Now, I think the last thing I wanted to talk about was the relationship between Batman and the Joker and where it will go from here into the sequel and so on. And I know I talked about how you don't necessarily need the Joker as a sequel villain. We're still unsure if that is going to happen or if it's going to be someone else. If you're not going to use the Joker as the villain in a second film, what you can continue to do is use what you did for the first movie. Batman clearly went to the Joker as some sort of an informant. Maybe for the second film, using the Joker as that informant is the way to go. And maybe what you can do is just show the Joker much more now, in the sense where you're not using blurred up close shots or any shot that's from an angle or to the side where you don't use his full face. Now you can actually get full shots without needing to tease the Joker, because now we've already seen him and we're already introduced to him. If you're using Hush in the way I imagine it, Hush would be going around carving off particular faces that would match Bruce Wayne's face, and then he leaves the corpses in alleyways or dumpster bins or wherever is secluded where no one would potentially find them other than Batman, and Batman starts delivering files of information of these corpses to the Joker so that the Joker could potentially help him in uncovering the plot to this case. Who knows, maybe at the end of the film you could get a 5-minute shot of the Joker breaking out of Arkham Asylum, which would then allude to his return as a much bigger role in number 3. Overall, I do think there should be a connection between Batman and Joker, and I think this is Matt Reeves' opportunity to dive into both of these characters and connect them in a way that whenever he decides to end this Batman world, it can feel like this Batman and this Joker have had so much history with one another. This is gonna end bad. It's gonna be emotional. It's gonna be dark. It's gonna be worthwhile because of how entertaining it's gonna be. It is simply just the opportunity to start creating a long-lasting relationship between the two of them. So there you have it, everyone. Those are some of my ideas for the future of the Batman franchise and the Batman sequel in general. I wanted to throw some ideas of who could be involved in the story and what particular stories from comic books they might consider using in the first place. Now, as per usual, it is your turn to go into the comments below and let me know what you think of my ideas, or if you have any ideas yourself of what you think or hope Matt Reeves could do for the sequel film. But that is it for this video, everyone, and just like usual, I will talk to you all very soon.